Grandma Rose always said, "Baby, pay attention to what a man does in the quiet. Not when he's performing. Not when the cameras are on. In the quiet. That's where his truth lives." Beatrice remembered those words the morning everything fell apart. It started with roses, 12 of them, deep red, still wrapped in the florist's cellophane, sitting in a crystal vase on the kitchen counter like something beautiful and unsuspecting. Beatrice saw them the moment she padded downstairs in her silk robe, coffee mug warming both palms, morning light pooling gold across the kitchen tiles. She stopped. She smiled. Chris had been distant lately, cold in a way that had no name and no explanation, disappearing on weekends, coming home smelling like somewhere else. But the roses said he was trying. The roses said maybe she had been imagining things. Maybe the quiet between them was just the weight of two busy lives and not the weight of something broken. She reached for the little white card tucked beneath the stems. She read it once, then again, slower, the way you reread something when your brain refuses to accept what your eyes already know. "For the mother of my son. Happy first birthday, my love. I'll be home early tonight. See." The coffee mug slipped from her fingers. It hit the tile and shattered. She didn't hear it. She stood in her kitchen in the spreading silence with the card between her trembling fingers and the words burning into her like something lit from inside. Mother of his son. A birthday. A baby. A first year of life she had known nothing about. She didn't have a son. She didn't have any children. She couldn't. That was the grief she had carried folded inside her chest for 4 years. Diagnosed on an ordinary Tuesday in a clinic that smelled like sanitizer and fluorescent light. Primary ovarian insufficiency. Her body could not do the one thing she had dreamed of since she was a little girl in her grandmother's kitchen in Atlanta, pressing a baby doll against her chest while Grandma Rose hummed hymns over a pot of greens. She remembered sitting in that clinic chair, hands folded in her lap, nodding slowly while the doctor spoke. And Chris had been beside her, holding her hand, his face carefully arranged into something that looked like solidarity. And afterward, in the parking lot, he had turned to her with so much tenderness in his eyes and said, "You are not broken, B. You hear me? You are everything. We are going to be okay." She had believed him. She had spent 4 years believing him. She had gone through fertility treatments with needles in her stomach and hope in her throat and come home each time to Chris's arms when the results came back failed. She had apologized to him, actually apologized on her knees on the bathroom floor, for her body, for not being able to give him what he wanted. And he had held her face in his hands and said, "Stop. Don't you ever apologize for who you are. You are enough." Her phone buzzed on the counter. An anonymous number. A tagged photo. Sent with the cold precision of someone who had been waiting for exactly the right moment. She opened it. And there he was, Chris, her husband of 6 years, standing in front of a birthday cake blazing with one single candle. His face open and laughing and more relaxed than she had seen him look in years. His arm wrapped around a woman, Korean, beautiful, radiant in the way of someone who is deeply loved and knows it. And in his arms, pressed against his chest like the most precious thing in the world, a baby boy, chubby cheeks, bright eyes, Chris's jaw. The caption, "My whole world. 1 year of you, my love. Hashtag family, hashtag my baby, hashtag blessed." Flash. The phone hit the floor. Beatrice stood very still. No tears came. Not yet. Just a cold, spreading numbness that moved from her chest outward, shutting off every soft thing so she could remain on her feet. Her mind was very quiet and very loud at the same time. She thought about the clinic waiting rooms, the injections, the blood draws, the 4th failed treatment, when she had curled on the bathroom floor and sobbed until she couldn't breathe, and Chris had held her and stroked her hair and told her they would try again. He already had a son. He had been holding her in that bathroom while his son was growing somewhere else. She thought about Grandma Rose, about what she would say right now if she were standing in this kitchen. She could almost hear her voice, low and southern and unhurried. "Baby, the truth don't always come gentle, but it always comes right on time." Beatrice got dressed. She drove. The address was in the tagged photo. A quiet, expensive neighborhood 40 minutes from the life she thought she had. She parked across the street and sat in her car and looked at the townhouse. Red tricycle on the porch, potted flowers in the window, wind chime above the door. All the small, loving details of a life built with intention. A life that had always existed alongside hers. The front door opened. The woman came out first. Young, soft-faced, carrying the baby boy on her hip. His little fist tangled in her hair, both of them laughing at something only they understood. Then Chris appeared. Loose, easy, sliding his phone into his pocket and wrapping an arm around her waist and pressing his lips first to the baby's head, then to the woman's temple. Beatrice felt the impact of it somewhere she had no name for. That ease, that openness. The version of Chris she had spent 6 years reaching for and never quite been able to hold. He had been saving it for someone else the entire time. She stepped out of the car. Her heels were steady. Her spine was straight. Her face was a closed door. She crossed the street and Chris saw her when she was 10 steps away. His face went the color of old paper. His arm fell from the woman's waist. B. How old is he? Not a question. Flat and certain. Beatrice, please, let me. How old is your son, Chris? He couldn't hold her eyes. 1 year. 1 year. She breathed that in. 1 year ago she had been in a clinic bed after her 4th failed treatment. And Chris had been sitting in the chair beside her, holding her hand, his face full of what she had believed was love. You held me on the floor, she said quietly. You watched me lose hope 4 times. You told me it wasn't my fault. Her voice didn't shake. It was worse than shaking. It was steady and final and certain. And you already had a son. Beatrice. You let me believe my body was the reason we were falling apart. She looked at him, really looked at him. For the last time. I spent 4 years believing I was broken. Chris. Because of you. She looked at the baby once. Beautiful boy. Innocent. Blameless entirely. Then she turned around. Walked back to her car. Got inside. Closed the door. She drove until the city blurred. She pulled over on a street she didn't recognize and pressed her forehead to the steering wheel and let the tears come. Not gently. Not quietly. The kind of tears that shake the whole body. The kind that come from the deepest, most private place inside a woman. The place she keeps the things she was too afraid to say out loud even to herself. She cried for the babies that never came. She cried for 4 years of apology. She cried for every morning she looked in the mirror and found herself lacking. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, she heard Grandma Rose's voice in her memory, warm and certain as sunlight. You cry it out, baby. Cry every drop. Because a woman who cries all her tears out has room to fill back up with something better. She didn't see the black SUV until it was 2 feet from her knees. She had gotten out of her car needing air, needing pavement beneath her feet, needing to be anywhere other than inside her own head. She was in Seoul's private business district. She had driven further than she realized. And the evening streets were busy with suited men and city noise. She stepped off the curb without looking. The SUV stopped hard. Tires against asphalt. A sharp, sudden halt. She didn't flinch. She just stood there in the middle of the road, tears dried on her cheeks, completely indifferent to the large black vehicle that had nearly just ended her. Because what could it take that hadn't already been taken today? The door opened. He stepped out. Tall, Korean, dressed in a charcoal suit that sat on him like it had been sewn to the specific architecture of his frame. Dark hair swept back from a face that was all clean lines and quiet authority. Sharp jaw, dark eyes, the kind of face that looked like it had made 1,000 decisions and never once doubted any of them. He came around the front of the SUV toward her with slow, unhurried steps. The kind of walk that didn't need to announce itself. He stopped in front of her. His eyes moved over her face. Not rudely. Not the way men looked at women they wanted something from. Carefully. Like he was reading something he hadn't been given permission to read and was being deliberate about it anyway. You stepped into a moving vehicle, he said. His voice was low. Even. Korean accented English. Delivered with the easy calm of someone who was never in a hurry because the world tended to wait for him. Beatrice looked at him. I'm sorry. Are you hurt? She almost said no. Almost performed the fine she had been performing all day. But something in the directness of his gaze stopped her. It was the kind of gaze that made performance feel pointless. Not physically, she said. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something she didn't expect. That kind of hurt is worse. She looked at him. He looked back. And for a few seconds, standing in the middle of a sole evening with traffic moving around them and the city loud and indifferent, something passed between two strangers that had no easy name. Come out of the road, he said. She stepped onto the pavement. He walked beside her to the curb, not steering her, not holding her arm, just walking beside her at exactly her pace, and stopped. He reached into his jacket. A card. Plain black, a single number. He held it out. She looked at it, then at him. What is this for? She said. In case tonight gets harder before it gets easier. She stared at him. He didn't elaborate, didn't perform, didn't smile the way men smiled at women they were trying to impress. He just held the card with the steady patience of someone who had already decided to offer it and was content to wait. She took it. He returned to his SUV. The door closed without a sound. The vehicle eased back into the evening traffic, smooth and unhurried, and was gone. Beatrice stood on the pavement, the black card between her fingers. She turned it over. One number, no name, and for 40 full seconds, she forgot about Chris entirely. She checked into a hotel. She could not go back to that house. Not to the roses still sitting on the counter. Not to the yellow nursery they had painted 2 years ago in a burst of hope before the third treatment failed. She sat on the hotel bed in the dark and didn't sleep. At 2 a.m., with Chris's unanswered messages piling up on her phone and the silence pressing against her like something physical, she opened a new message and typed the number from the black card. Are you always this forward with women you almost run over? She stared at it, almost deleted it, sent it. 3 minutes. Then only the ones brave enough to stand in traffic. She sat with that, typed. That wasn't bravery. That was distraction. A pause. Then, what distracted you? She looked at that question for a long time. Something I should have seen coming. His reply came slowly, thoughtfully, like he had actually considered it. The things we should have seen coming are the ones we trusted too much to question. That is never the fault of the one who trusted. Beatrice read that sentence 3 times. She turned off the phone and lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling. And for the first time since that morning, the pain in her chest felt less like destruction and more like the very first breath after going under. She learned his name 4 days later from a colleague at work. Quan Ethan, CEO of KW Global Technology, Real Estate International Development. One of the most respected executives in South Korea. Meticulous, private, brilliant. Her colleague had said his name with the particular reverence people reserve for men who have built something genuinely impressive. Genuinely good man, people say. Not many of those at that level. Beatrice had sat with that quietly. She had exchanged 14 messages with him in 4 days. Not romantic messages. Not flirtatious ones. Observations. Questions. Occasionally something one of them said that made the other think for a long time before replying. He asked things like, what does your morning look like when it's good? And what did you want to be when you were small? And once, very late at night, do you think people can rebuild themselves from the middle? Not the beginning. Not the end. Just from wherever they are. She had replied, I think they have to. Nobody gets to start over. You just start from here. He had not replied for 2 hours. Then, I've been thinking about that answer since you sent it. She met him in person again on the 5th day. She was in a cafe near her office, the one with the corner window and the good light. Nursing a coffee she had no intention of finishing, staring at nothing, when a shadow crossed her table. She looked up. He stood there. No entourage. Just him. Dark coat, hands loose at his sides, looking down at her with those quiet, reading eyes. You own this building too, she said. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Almost. I do not own this one. A pause. I just remembered you mentioned the street. She looked at him. He looked back without apology. She gestured at the chair across from her. He sat. He didn't rush to fill the silence. He ordered tea for himself and then, without fanfare, ordered food for both of them. She opened her mouth to object. He said, gently and without room for argument, you haven't eaten properly today. You can't possibly know that. You have the look, he said simply. She frowned. What look? The look of someone surviving on determination and caffeine and refusing to admit they need anything. He looked at her steadily. I know that look. I wore it for 3 years after my company nearly collapsed. She paused. Your company nearly collapsed? 7 years ago. My father built the foundation. I nearly destroyed it trying to rebuild it my way too fast. A pause. He was quiet in the careful way of someone choosing which part of a truth to share. I stopped eating properly, stopped sleeping, told myself I was fine every single morning. His eyes met hers. I was not fine. The food arrived. It smelled extraordinary and she realized with some embarrassment, absolutely starving. She ate. He watched the street outside without speaking, giving her the privacy of the moment. That small courtesy, the deliberate looking away, the space to be hungry without being observed, cracked something small inside her chest. Why are you here, Ethan? She said when she set down her fork. He turned back to her. Because I have been thinking about what you said. About seeing something coming and not being able to stop it. He paused. I wanted to know if you were still standing. She held his gaze. I'm still standing. Good, he said. And then, with a simplicity that somehow carried enormous weight. You should be. He became a presence in her life so gradually she couldn't have named the moment it shifted from occasional to constant. A text in the morning. Not always, maybe 4 days out of 7. Just something small. A question. An observation. Once, a photograph of the sunrise over Seoul from his office window with no caption at all. And she had stared at it for a long time trying to understand why a man who ran a billion-dollar company was sending her wordless photographs of the sky. She called Grandma Rose on a Thursday evening. She hadn't told her grandmother the full story yet. Just that the marriage was ending. Grandma Rose, who was 74 and sharp as a new blade and had never once in her life wasted a word, had listened to everything Beatrice said and then been quiet for a moment. And this new man, she said. This Ethan. I didn't say he was a new man. I said he was. Baby, I have been alive 74 years. I know the sound of a woman's voice when she's talking about someone who matters. A pause. What is he like? Beatrice thought about it honestly. He's quiet, she said. But not empty quiet. Full quiet. Like there's a lot happening inside and he chooses very carefully what comes out. She paused. He asks questions like he actually wants to know the answers. He doesn't try to fix me. She stopped. He just what? He just shows up, she said. Consistently. Without making a production of it. Grandma Rose was quiet on the other end of the line for a moment. Then she said something Beatrice would write in her journal that night and read again many times afterward. Listen to me, B. A man who performs love is putting on a show. A man who practices love is building something. Your grandfather, God rest him, he never once in 51 years brought me a grand gesture. But for 51 years he showed up. Every ordinary day, he showed up. That is what love looks like when it's real. Not the roses, baby. Not the speeches. The showing up. Beatrice sat very still on her hotel bed, thinking about roses, thinking about a man who had sent her a photograph of the sunrise because he thought she might like it. He took her to dinner on a Friday, properly with a reservation, opening the car door, his hand light at the small of her back as they walked inside. Not possessive, just present. The restaurant was elegant and quiet, the kind of place where conversations could breathe. They talked for 3 hours. She learned that he had grown up watching his father build KW Global from a single office in Busan, that he had taken over at 32 and nearly dismantled everything with his own pride before learning, slowly and painfully, how to lead with patience instead of force, that he had been engaged once. She had not asked, he offered it, to a woman who loved the idea of him more than she loved him, and that the ending had been mutual and quiet and had taught him more about himself than anything before it. What did it teach you? She asked. He considered. That I had been performing a version of myself I thought people wanted. The decisive one. The controlled one. The one who didn't need anything. He turned his wine glass slowly. She held up a mirror one day and said, I don't know who you actually are, Ethan. And I don't think you do either. A pause. She wasn't wrong. Beatrice looked at him across the candlelight. Who are you actually? He met her eyes. A long, honest, undefended moment. A man who works too hard and feels more than he shows and wants very badly to build something that lasts. His voice was quiet. I am still figuring out the rest. She felt something in her chest shift. Gently, like a door opening on well-oiled hinges. That's the most honest thing anyone has ever said to me on a first dinner, she said. Is this a first dinner? I'm choosing to count it as the first one that counts. He looked at her. That almost smile again. A little warmer this time. Then I am glad I was honest. She told him about the diagnosis 6 weeks after they met. They were walking along the Han River after dinner. The city glittered on the water. The air was cool and carried the smell of the river and the distant warmth of street food vendors. They had been walking in comfortable silence, the kind that had stopped feeling like something to fill and started feeling like something to rest in. She didn't plan to tell him. Came out the way true things come out. Not because you opened the door, but because you finally stopped holding it shut. Can I ask you something? She said. Always. When you look at me, she paused, searched for the words. Do you see someone who is? She stopped again. He slowed his walk, turned to look at her fully. Tell me what you're actually asking. She exhaled. Chris made me feel like the reason our marriage was broken was my body. She kept her eyes on the river. I can't have children naturally. That's been true for 4 years. And for 4 years I genuinely believed that my infertility was why he pulled away. Why things got cold. Why he stopped choosing me. She paused. Finding out about his son didn't just feel like betrayal. Felt like confirmation. Like the story I'd been telling myself about being broken was finally proven true. Silence. The water moved. The city glittered. Ethan was quiet for long enough that she turned to look at him. He was watching her with an expression she had not seen from him before. Not pity. She would have closed up immediately at pity. Not sympathy either. Something more specific than either of those. The expression of a person who has just heard something that matters and is taking it seriously enough to find the right words instead of the fast ones. My mother lost 3 pregnancies before she had me, he said. His voice was quiet. The 3rd one almost killed her. The doctors told her she should not try again. He paused. She tried again. She had me at 41. He looked at Beatrice steadily. She told me once that those years, the losses, the waiting, the grief, were the years she learned who she actually was. Not what she could produce. Not what her body could do. Who she was. Another pause. She said she would not trade that knowledge for anything. Beatrice felt her throat tighten. Your body is not your value, Ethan said, quietly, directly, without decoration. It never was. A man who allowed you to believe otherwise was protecting his own guilt, not telling you any truth about yourself. She pressed her lips together, looked back at the river. Grandma Rose always told me, she said softly, that a woman's worth is not in what she can give to others. It's in who she is when she has nothing left to give. She paused. I believed her when I was young. Somewhere along the way Chris made me forget it. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, what else did she say? Your grandmother. Something in his asking, the genuine curiosity of it, the real wanting to know, broke her open gently, and she found herself talking about Grandma Rose, the kitchen in Atlanta, the hymns over the pot of greens, the particular way her grandmother had of delivering wisdom like it was ordinary, like truth was just something you said out loud between tasks, because why would you hold it back? Ethan listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't check his phone. He didn't offer parallel stories to center himself. He just listened, fully and completely, with his eyes on her face and his whole body turned toward her, the way people used to listen before the world got loud. When she finished, he said, She sounds extraordinary. She's the reason I know what I'm worth, Beatrice said. Even when I forget. He looked at her, soft and direct at the same time. Then she gave you a great gift. They walked in silence for a while after that. Comfortable. Easy. 2 people who had stopped performing and started simply being. Without planning it, she reached out and linked her arm through his. He didn't react with surprise. He simply settled slightly, adjusted his pace to match hers more closely, and continued walking, as if she had always been there beside him, as if this was just where she belonged. Grandma Rose arrived on a Tuesday morning with one large suitcase, a Tupperware of homemade tea cakes wrapped in foil, and the serene confidence of a woman who had never once in her life been intimidated by anywhere she had arrived. Beatrice had finally found her own apartment, clean, bright, with enough window light to feel like a fresh start. She had also, quietly and without announcement, filed her final divorce papers. That chapter was closed. Not with drama. With the simple, dignified finality of a woman who had decided her life was worth more than the space she had been occupying in someone else's. Grandma Rose walked through the apartment, touching things, looking out the window at Seoul below, and finally sat at the kitchen table with her hands folded and looked at her granddaughter. "You look different," she said. "Different how?" "Taller." She tilted her head. "Not in your shoes. In yourself." She studied Beatrice with those sharp, warm eyes that had always seen more than Beatrice intended to show. "It's that man, isn't it?" Beatrice sat down across from her. "He's just a friend, Grandma." Grandma Rose looked at her with the patient, unbothered expression of someone who had not lived 74 years to be told obvious lies by people she loved. "Baby," she said, "I have been praying for this man since before you even knew he existed." Beatrice blinked. "What?" "I prayed for the man who would see you." She unfolded her hands and reached across to cover Beatrice's. Her hands were warm and dry and felt like every safe place Beatrice had ever known. "Not see you and want something from you. Not see you and decide what you were worth based on what you could give him. See you. The whole of you. The wounds and the strength and the stubbornness and the love." She paused. "I prayed for a man who would look at my granddaughter and see exactly what I see." Beatrice's eyes filled. "And from what you have told me," Grandma Rose said gently, "I believe God sent him to you in the middle of a road." A tear rolled down Beatrice's cheek before she could stop it. Her grandmother smiled. Not triumphantly, warmly, the smile of a woman whose prayer had been answered. "Now," she said, releasing Beatrice's hands and reaching for her tea cakes. "When do I meet him?" She brought Ethan to the apartment for dinner that Saturday. He arrived with flowers, not roses, she noticed immediately, which she suspected was not accidental, and a bottle of wine and a quiet nervousness she had never seen from him before. He was always composed, always certain, but standing outside her door waiting to meet her grandmother, he looked, for just a moment, like a man who understood that some rooms required more than composure. Grandma Rose looked him up and down from the moment he walked through the door. Unhurried, thorough, with the frank, unself-conscious assessment of a grandmother who had earned the right to evaluate and would not be apologizing for it. Ethan looked back at her with respectful, steady eyes and said, "It is an honor to meet you, Mrs. Rose." Grandma Rose let 3 full seconds pass. Then she said, "You have honest eyes." She turned and walked back to the kitchen. "Come help me with this rice." Beatrice stood in the doorway watching Ethan Kwan, CEO of KW Global, follow her 74-year-old grandmother into the kitchen and listen attentively as she taught him how she made her rice, and felt something move inside her chest that was enormous and warm and terrifying and beautiful all at once. During dinner, Grandma Rose said things that Ethan received with the seriousness they deserved. She said, "A strong woman doesn't need saving. She needs someone strong enough to stand beside her without feeling threatened by her light." She said, "My husband used to say, love is not a feeling you fall into. It's a choice you make every single morning when you wake up and decide this person is worth your best." And she looked directly at Ethan when she said, "My granddaughter has been told lies about herself by a small man. She may still be carrying some of those lies without knowing it. A man who loves her right will be patient with that. He won't rush her healing. He'll just keep showing her the truth until the lies don't have room to live anymore." The table was quiet after that. Ethan looked at Grandma Rose for a long moment. Then he said, with a directness and simplicity that made Beatrice's breath catch, "I intend to." Grandma Rose nodded once, like something had been confirmed. She reached for the tea cakes. "Good," she said. "Now eat." It happened on a quiet evening 3 months after they met. They were in his apartment. She had been there enough times now that she knew where things were, that she had a mug that had become her mug without either of them deciding it, that the silences between them had a texture of their own now, familiar and warm. They were sitting on the floor of his living room, her back against the couch, him beside her, the city blazing beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. She had been quiet for a while. He noticed. He always noticed. "What's happening in there?" he said. She looked at her hands in her lap. "I spoke to the doctor today," she said. "A follow-up. About she paused. "About my condition." He waited. "She said there's a small possibility. With treatment. With care." She swallowed. "She said it's not impossible. Just unlikely." She looked up at the window. "I've heard those words before. I know what they usually mean." Ethan was quiet beside her. "And I thought I was okay with it," she said. "I thought I had made peace with it. But sitting in that office today, Her voice cracked. "Just once." She pressed it down. "I want to be a mother. I still want it. And I hate that I still want it because wanting it means it can still hurt me." A tear fell before she could stop it. Then another. She pressed her fingers to her eyes. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm Beatrice." His voice was low. "Close." She felt him shift beside her. "I'm fine, Look at me." She lowered her hands, turned to face him. He was looking at her with those dark, steady eyes. And what she saw in them in that moment. Not pity, not discomfort, not the particular male panic of a man who doesn't know what to do with a woman's tears, was something so direct and so warm and so completely without condition that it almost undid her entirely. He reached out. His hand came to the side of her face, tilting it gently up to his. His thumb moved once across her cheekbone, wiping the tear with a tenderness so specific and deliberate that it felt like a language. "Listen to me," he said. His voice was quiet, each word placed with care, like something he had been holding and was finally ready to give. "You are not defined by what your body can or cannot do. You are not more or less worthy of love based on what you can produce." His eyes held hers. "You are one of the most remarkable people I have ever known. Your warmth, your intelligence, your strength, the way you love people, fully, without holding back, even after someone used that love against you." His jaw tightened slightly. Chris was a man who did not have the capacity to deserve you. And because small men cannot admit their own insufficiency, he made you carry the blame for his failure. She was shaking slightly, trying to hold herself together. "You are not broken, Beatrice." His voice was fierce and certain and soft all at the same time. "You were never broken. Not for a single day." He paused. Let those words settle. Then, quietly, with everything behind them, "He was just unworthy of you." She broke. Fully. Completely. The way she had not broken since that morning in the kitchen with the birthday card in her hand. She cried with her whole body, for the fertility clinic waiting rooms, for the 4 years of quiet apology, for the version of herself that had folded shame into her identity and worn it like it belonged there. Ethan pulled her into him. He wrapped both arms around her and held her, solid and warm and completely still, and let her cry every drop. He didn't try to quiet her, didn't rush her, didn't offer words to fill the space, just held her with the kind of steadiness that tells a person without saying anything, "I am not going anywhere. You are safe. Let it out." When she finally stilled, her head on his chest, his hand moving slowly up her back, she heard his heartbeat. Steady, unhurried. She thought about what Grandma Rose had said on the phone all those weeks ago. "Not the roses, baby. The showing up." "Ethan," she said quietly. "Yes. I think I'm falling in love with you." His hand stilled on her back. Then, slowly, he pressed his lips to the top of her head. And she felt the words against her hair, low and certain and real. "I know," he said, "because I fell first." The nausea started on a Monday. She ignored it, put it down to stress, to the adjustment medication the doctor had started her on at their last appointment. A new protocol, gentle, low expectation, let's just see how your body responds. She had nodded and taken the prescription and filed it in the same part of herself where she filed fragile hope. The part with the padded walls. By Thursday, the nausea had not stopped. She bought the test at a pharmacy 3 streets from her apartment, carried it home in a paper bag, and sat on the bathroom floor for 11 minutes before she opened it. Grandma Rose had gone back to Atlanta 2 weeks earlier. Before she left, she had held Beatrice's face in her hands at the airport and said, I prayed for your children before I prayed for your husband. Baby, God is not done with your story yet. Beatrice had smiled and hugged her and not let herself believe it. She looked at the test. 2 lines. She looked again. 2 lines. She sat on the bathroom floor with her back against the wall and pressed the test against her chest and said nothing for a very long time. Just breathed. In and out. The apartment quiet around her. The city moving outside the window, indifferent and ordinary, and completely unaware that something impossible had just happened in a small bathroom on the 4th floor. Then she picked up her phone. She called Ethan. He answered on the 2nd ring. Beatrice. She opened her mouth. No words came. Beatrice. His voice shifted. Alert. Careful. What's wrong? Where are you? I'm home, she said. Her voice came out strange. Thin and full at the same time. I'm home and She stopped, pressed her lips together. Ethan. I need you to come over. I'm already in the car, he said. She heard the door close behind him. I'm coming. Talk to me. I'm okay, she said. I promise I'm okay. She looked at the test still pressed against her chest. 2 lines. 2 perfect, impossible lines. I need to show you something. He was at her door in 22 minutes. She opened it before he knocked. She was still in her pajamas, hair loose, bare feet on the tile, and she was holding the test in her hand. Ethan looked at her face first, then at the test. His eyes moved back to her face. She watched him understand. She watched the understanding move through him, through that composed, controlled, meticulous man, like a wave through still water. His eyes went wide, just slightly, just enough. His jaw worked once. His hand came up to cover his mouth. Beatrice. Her name from him in that moment was a completely different thing than it had ever been before. Raw, undone, reverent. 2 lines, she whispered. Ethan, it's 2 lines. He crossed the threshold. He took the test from her hand and looked at it and then looked at her, and his eyes were bright in a way she had never seen from him. This man who kept everything behind glass. This man who measured his words and controlled his expression and always held himself together. He was not holding himself together right now. He put his arms around her and pulled her into him, and she felt him exhale. A long, shaking, enormous exhale against the top of her head. Okay, he said. His voice was thick. Okay. She laughed. Not a small laugh. A full, bright, incredulous laugh that surprised even her. Bubbling up from somewhere so deep and so long closed that she hadn't known it was still there. She laughed and then she cried and then she laughed again, and he held her through all of it, his hand on the back of her head, his chest shaking with something that sounded like it might also be a laugh and might also be a sob. She called Grandma Rose that night. Her grandmother listened to everything. When Beatrice finished, there was a silence on the line. Then the sound of someone setting something down. Then Grandma Rose's voice, different from usual, lower, softer, full of a private, grateful quiet. I told you, baby, she said. I told you God was not done with your story. The ultrasound was at 8 weeks. Beatrice lay on the table with Ethan's hand in hers, holding it the way she had needed someone to hold her hand in so many clinical rooms before this one. The technician moved the wand. The screen flickered. Then the technician went still. Then she smiled. Mrs. Kwan, she said, looking at the screen with the particular expression of someone delivering news that never got old. Do you see these 2 here? Beatrice squinted at the screen. 2 small shapes. 2 flickering heartbeats. Rapid and strong and absolutely real. Twins, the technician said. The word hit the room like a bell. Beatrice turned to look at Ethan. He was staring at the screen. His jaw was tight. His eyes were very bright. His hand gripped hers so carefully it was almost not a grip at all. More like a held breath. Twins, Beatrice repeated. The word felt enormous in her mouth. Ethan turned to look at her, and the expression on his face. This man, this reserved, controlled, extraordinary man who had handed her a card in a road and shown up consistently and held her while she cried and told her she was not broken. The expression on his face was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. He brought her hand to his lips, pressed them there, held them there, said nothing, said everything. They were married in a small ceremony 4 months before the babies came. Not a grand performance. A chapel. Flowers. The people they loved most. Grandma rose in the front row in a yellow dress she had bought specifically. She announced, because yellow was the color of answered prayers. When Ethan slid the ring onto Beatrice's finger, he leaned forward and said something quietly that only she could hear. She smiled. She would tell Grandma Rose later. Her grandmother would nod and say, "See, I told you. Honest eyes." The babies arrived on a Thursday morning in early spring. A boy and a girl. The boy came first. Loud, indignant, immediately opinionated about the world he had just entered. The girl came second, quieter, eyes wide open from the first breath, looking around with an expression of someone taking inventory. Beatrice held them both, one in each arm. She looked down at them, these two small, perfect, impossible people who had been told by biology and statistics and 4 years of grief that they would never exist, and she felt something happen inside her chest that she had no word for. Something so large and so warm and so complete that it made every other feeling she had ever had seem like a sketch of what feeling actually was. She thought about the kitchen with the roses, the birthday card, the floor she had sobbed on, the clinic rooms, the 4 years of apology. She thought about a road in the evening, a black SUV, a man with honest eyes who said, "That kind of hurt is worse." She thought about Grandma Rose's voice, "Not the roses, baby, the showing up." She thought about a bathroom floor and 2 lines and a laugh that came from so deep inside her she hadn't known it was still there. She looked up. Ethan was standing beside the bed, looking at his children with an expression of absolute, unguarded wonder. The composed, meticulous, quietly extraordinary man completely undone by 2 small people who had not yet done a single thing except arrive. He looked at her. She looked at him. "Hi," she said. He sat on the edge of the bed, leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers. His hand came to rest on the blanket over both babies. "Hi," he said back. His voice was thick, unsteady in the best possible way. They stayed like that for a moment, foreheads together, babies between them, the room warm and quiet and smelling like the beginning of everything. Then Beatrice turned her face slightly and pressed her lips to his cheek. "Thank you," she whispered. He turned to look at her. For what? She thought about it. For showing up. For the sunrise photograph. For dinner for 3 hours. For not rushing her. For your grandmother's voice in a kitchen. For honest eyes. For the words that set her free on a floor in the middle of the night. For seeing me, she said. His hand tightened gently on the blanket. Always, he said. From the very first second. 3 days later, Grandma Rose sat in the hospital room chair with the baby girl asleep on her chest, rocking very gently, humming something low and southern and warm. The boy was in the bassinet, temporarily satisfied with the world. Beatrice watched her grandmother from the bed, exhausted and radiant and more herself than she had ever been. "What are you humming?" she asked. Grandma Rose smiled without opening her eyes. "Same thing I hummed over you when you were this size." She paused. "And the same thing I hummed when I was praying for the day that came." Beatrice was quiet for a moment. "Grandma," she said softly, "what do I teach her? When she's old enough, what do I tell her about herself?" Grandma Rose opened her eyes then, looked at her granddaughter. This woman she had watched survive and grieve and rebuild and bloom, with those warm, sharp, 74-year-old eyes that had never once in their life looked at Beatrice and seen anything less than extraordinary. "You tell her," she said. "Exactly what I told you." She looked down at the baby girl sleeping on her chest, touched her tiny face with one gentle finger. "You tell her her worth is not in what she can give. It's in who she is." A pause. "You tell her to pay attention to what a man does in the quiet. Not when he's performing. In the quiet." Another pause. "And you tell her that if she ever finds herself in a season of grief over something her body can or cannot do, if anyone ever makes her feel like her value lives in what she can produce." Her voice was steady and certain and full. "You tell her she is not broken." She looked up at Beatrice. He was just unworthy. The room was quiet. Outside the window, soul moved and breathed and continued, vast and indifferent and beautiful, completely unaware that in a small hospital room on the 5th floor, a woman who had been told she would never hold a child was holding 2. That a woman who had spent 4 years believing she was broken had discovered she was whole. That love, when it is real, when it is chosen every ordinary morning, when it shows up without performance, when it sees you fully and holds you steadily and tells you the truth about yourself until the lies don't have room to live anymore, love like that can heal things that medicine could not. Grandma Rose began to hum again. The baby girl slept on. And Beatrice, holding her son and watching her grandmother hold her daughter and knowing that Ethan was just down the hall getting terrible hospital coffee and would be back in 4 minutes because he was always back. Beatrice closed her eyes and felt, for the first time in longer than she could remember, the full, enormous, unguarded weight of being happy. Completely, thoroughly, finally, happy. A woman who knows her own worth does not beg to be chosen. She simply becomes so whole within herself that the right person cannot help but find her. Grandma Rose. And that, my beautiful besties, is where Beatrice's story ends. Not in a clinic waiting room, not on a bathroom floor, not in the shadow of a man who let her believe she was broken, but with a baby in each arm. A man beside her who saw her, fully, completely, without condition, from the very first second. And a grandmother's prayer finally, gloriously answered. If the story touched your heart today, if you saw yourself in Beatrice, if you have ever been made to feel like you're worth lives in what your body can or cannot do, if you have ever loved someone who was building a secret life behind your back while you were busy apologizing for your own existence, this comment section is yours. Tell me your story. Tell me what line hit you the hardest. Tell me if you have a Grandma Rose in your life, that one woman who always spoke truth over you when the world was telling you lies. Because I read every single comment. Every one. And if nobody has said it to you today, let me be the one to say it right now. You are not broken. You never were. He was just unworthy. Now do something for me. Share this story with one woman who needs to hear it today. Just one. Your sister. Your best friend. Your coworker who has been quiet lately. The woman in your life who has been carrying something heavy and trying to pretend she is fine. Send it to her. Because sometimes the right story finds us at exactly the right moment. And it changes everything. If you are new here, welcome home, bestie. Hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications because we tell stories here that go straight to the soul. Every single week. And if you have been here from the beginning, you already know. You know what we do here. We sit together, we feel together, and we remind each other of what we are worth. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for being the kind of woman who still believes in love, real love, earned love, showing up every ordinary day love. Even after everything life has put you through. That belief is not naivety. That belief is courage. Don't lose it. I will see you in the next story, besties. And until then, stay whole.